influence is not the same as a lack of free will. That's true. And you are influenced by your friends and your family to do certain things, achieve certain goals, lead certain life paths. However, how do you know this isn't your brain kind of tricking you into rationalizing a decision that you did not make? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Sulk stream. I am your host, Incredible Sulk. And I hope you guys are doing great tonight. It's a Thursday? Is it a Thursday? It's a Thursday. It's a Thursday. Let's hear this banger again. Hold on, I gotta start it over. How you doing? I hope you guys are doing good. I went to the beach today. I'm a little bit sun-kissed. That's how I do it. That's how I like to do it. And I hope you guys like to do it that way too. Keeps things fresh. You gotta stay grounded. Tonight we're talking about free will. A very divisive topic. Do you have it? Do you want it? Are you responsible for your decisions? If you aren't, is our legal system flawed somehow? Are you in the position you want to be right now? If not, then how do you really have free will? These are all very interesting questions that we will tackle tonight. And it might get a little weird. Not like last night. Last night was that was just disturbing. Tonight might be simply unsettling. So I hope you guys are ready. And yeah. So what else? What else? I say we just get going. Or maybe that's not even my decision. It's starting. It's starting and it's gonna hurt. Anyways, get comfy. Get cozy. Grab a nice bottle of, I don't know. You have to make a decision. Or do you? Do you only have one thing left in the house? Or nothing at all? Complicated. Anyways. If you're working, keep working, because you have to. You have no choice. If you're driving, keep driving and drive safely, unless you don't want to. Anyways, thank you so much for coming. Again, it is a Thursday night. I'm the Incredible Sulk. This is the Sulk stream, and this is called Free Will. It's just a question. It's just a question of free will. Enjoy. 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 Thank you so much for being here. Hit the like button if you guys don't mind. It really makes me feel good when you do that. So I appreciate it. Now, I can see it. Do it now.
Free will versus determinism. Does free will exist?
I've watched that guy a couple of times.
It seems like events in the universe are necessitated by previous events.
And
That's
yet,
true.
That's
Is it, do we just like make decisions based on what happened to us earlier that were not our decision? Are we just kind of algorithms that kind of put things together and like make the best course of action? Or do we really have free will? I mean, we can make bad decisions, right? And you're only smart enough to make a smart decision if you are smart enough to make that smart decision. So if you are stupid, you cannot choose to make a smart decision. Limitations.
seems to contradict, to go against the very powerful subjective impression that we all have.
Onia says you can't know the future, so it really doesn't matter if we have free will in the end. The result is the same. Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. And the cat is here.
We have
Of
a
course.
strong need to think
Of course.
that the way we are
Of course the cat is
and the
here.
kind of person we
Of
are
course the cat needs it.
is somehow a matter of our own
course.
creation.
Come on, cat.
That I am what I am because I have, to some degree at least, made myself into the kind of
Glad
being
you decided
that I
to
am.
join us.
This is one
Almost
reason why
fell.
we value free will. It gives us the sense that there are more than one pathway into the future that we could go down. If determinism is true, there's only one.
Free will is the foundational philosophy, in a sense.
Our fundamental beliefs about what a human
Scott says nothing is free. And, yeah. I mean, well, if you're talking about, like, energy, everything costs energy. You need to think and stuff like that. If you're talking like that kind of free, or we are not free to do as we choose, do we, like, kind of are guided in a certain direction and through a confluence of happenings in our life lead us to certain lifestyles, life paths? I don't know. I used to not believe in free will. Because I felt like I had very little control over my life, regardless of what I wanted out of it. But now I'm not so sure. That's it.
human being is rely on what we think about free will.
And it reaches into all
JD,
different kinds.
JD's here, everybody. Everybody, thank God JD is here. I told him that he should be here, and he's here. So, JD, Ardenshire, David, Onius, Arden, again, Scott, and then nobody else.
Kinds of components and sub areas of philosophy.
Then nobody else.
Our entire legal systems and the notion of moral responsibility.
How does
Tiny
physical
gay
causality
glasses.
work? How we could be the ultimate creators of our own will.
We have psychological forcing, subliminal advertising, and
Subliminal advertising is actually a good point. Because if they're like hypnotizing you, right. What about, where does like hypnosis or like MK Ultra stuff? I know a lot of people don't believe in hypnosis, but it is kind of real. Just maybe not on like the stage where you get like, oh, I'm a hypnotist, and then people do as I say through the power of suggestion. That is very much, you choose to follow that kind of person. But there's also societal pressures. When it comes to like things like MK Ultra, how much is that your decision? A lot of people like to think they're different, like they're a unique entity. But when it comes down to it, everyone just kind of follows the crowd, right? And if something tells you, like the news or a bunch of other people tells you the crowd is going this one direction, you're very likely to follow that, even against your own best interests, even against your own like ideas and stuff like that. So, is that your decision? I guess. If you want to lose a bunch of shit, like your friends and your family.
it's important to recognize these are all threats to our autonomy.
Our ability to make choices could have enormous implications for how we think about human beings.
Do we have free will? And then why do we feel like we do?
Arden Shara says influence is not the same as a lack of free will. It's true. That's true. But here's the thing. Excuse me. I have to clear my throat.
We have evolved this human desire to understand.
Free will. For many, these two words encompass what it means to be human. What it
Okay.
means.
Arden Shara says influence is not the same as a lack of free will. That's true. And you are influenced by your friends and your family to do certain things, achieve certain goals, lead certain life paths. However, how do you know this isn't your brain kind of tricking you into rationalizing a decision that you did not make? Right? So you make a decision without any free will. It just kind of happens. And then your brain tries to put together the parts to make you think you had free will in the first place to make that decision. You could have chosen not to do that because your brain has to think you have free will. It's an integral part of being a human being. is to think we have agency over our destiny. Do we, though? Do we?
To truly be an individual, to be deserving of your accomplishments, and to accept responsibility for your mistakes. Most of us acknowledge there are some things we cannot control. The genes we inherit, our birthplace, our parents. We recognize that we are shaped by both nature and nurture.
But almost entirely nature. The entire nature and nurture argument it goes out the window when you adopt a little black kid from Africa. You can't raise him to be like a, or maybe, let's pick a different example. You adopt a chimpanzee and you raise him to like drive cars and like ring doorbells and like, be a person. But he's not going to be a person. He's always going to be a chimpanzee. He's not going to be a person. He might be able to drive a car, but he's not going to be able to like hold down a life and like sustain a job. It's just nurture goes only so far. And that so far is about that far. It's not very far. Everybody's life is basically predestined by the meat that they have in their head, their genetics. When I say genetics, I mean the way they look. If they're very attractive, they're going to have a lot more opportunities than somebody who's like an ugg. And that's exactly how it should be. I don't like ugly people.
Yet we may long for a third component known as choice to validate the sense of control we have over our lives. However,
David says there's a fungus that completely takes over the minds of ants, takes ants' minds over and makes them do very specific activities. Yeah, I think that was the entire basis for like The Last of Us, like that entire fungus, and that's a cordyceps, I think they're called, or something like that. Yeah, that's a real thing. So funguses can control people's minds. It's kind of interesting because when you do mushrooms, how do you know that's not happening?
Advances in modern science put this notion.
Oh, it's just poison. You're just poisoning your brain, and you see these miracles. You see these religious experience. You speak to these aliens, these machine elves and stuff like that. That's not real. That's in your head. Are you sure?
Of control into
Are you sure?
By reading electrical activity in the brain, researchers say they can predict a person's voluntary choices several seconds prior to them being consciously aware of their decisions.
Several seconds before. So they can actually read somebody's mind with like an MRI and then tell what decision they're going to make before they even make it. That's a very strong argument for not having free will. How it's just like, it's almost instinctual, the decision that you're going to make. As a human being, we come from countless generations of beings that survived, and hesitation is death. So when you make a decision, you might have made a decision long ago, and then you thinking that you made that decision makes you rationalize that in your head. Makes you think that you made that decision because your brain needs to maintain this illusion that you are in control. Otherwise, bad things happen, I guess. I mean, I guess you'd get depressed. You would, I don't know. I have no idea what would happen. Maybe nothing. This is a weird argument, right? Because if you think you have no decision in life, then your life might, do a downward spiral and stuff like that, right? And you start doing heroin. You make the decision to start doing heroin and stuff. It gets too complicated. If you can't make decisions, then you are predestined to start doing heroin anyway. But if you hadn't heard that free will didn't exist, you wouldn't be doing heroin. So what's the deal?
And the laws of nature discovered by physicists don't appear to allow any exception for human action. So is free will real, imagined, or just a useful human construction? Great minds from the past have attempted to reconcile both the apparent truth of cause and effect and the desire to be in control of one's own actions. But can modern developments in science and philosophy provide a definitive...
David says Dostoevsky, the Grand Inquisitor, is about the head of the Spanish Inquisition berating Jesus for giving humanity the worst curse of all, free will. The Grand Inquisitor by Dostoevsky. Yeah.
Answer to this age-old
I didn't know that, but awesome.
problem. With such powerful consequences on our notions of identity, morality, and law, this is an issue humanity cannot afford to get wrong.
Do we have free will? That's a tricky question.
I used to ask myself this
Yeah,
question.
tricky question, because she's about to chimp out.
That is the fundamental question.
And that's not her choice, right? So her ending up in jail for her chimping out is, or stealing something is, it's not her fault. See, this is, if somebody steals something, they have motivations to steal something, right? They're either very hungry and they steal a loaf of bread, or they're very stupid and they steal a pair of Nikes. At what point is it their fault? You know, at what point is it their fault? That's why people don't like this conversation. People don't like the free will conversation. It gets very uncomfortable very quickly. And so people choose to ignore it. But do they choose? Or are they just trying to maintain the status quo? They're trying to make their lives bearable, right? So it just kind of drifts out of their head naturally.
And it shapes your worldview in many ways.
We pretty much have free will. If you look
Blood
at
moon tonight.
Absolutely not.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think we do, yeah.
I don't think we have free will.
Hey, David P.
I hope so. It's quite an interesting question, really. It's a very complex question.
Ardenshire says Dostoevsky. Why I have to make choices? Oh, life is more complicated than it first appears to be. Oh, I'm gonna write a 1,000-page book about it that nobody's gonna read, and then the people that do read won't understand it, but they're gonna say, "I read Dostoevsky's book. Oh, look at that! I'm so classy. I'm so sophisticated," even though they didn't understand shit about it. Yeah. Yep. Take me outside to look at it.
The concept of free will is very important for us.
I'm on your phone. I know I'm on your phone. It just looks like a normal moon because I don't think the blood moon happens until like the early morning time. So I don't think it's. I heard about it, but I don't think it's till like way later tonight or tomorrow morning.
Because we make sense of our lives by assuming that we are agents. That is, that we make decisions, that we make choices. What makes my life meaningful is, in fact, the
Well, I'm a philosopher. His name is Massimo, and he's a philosopher. Who gave you the title of philosopher? Were you like, I'm a philosopher, so I should have these gay little glasses and these tiny earrings because I'm such a deep thinker? I don't like you, Massimo. Pigliucci? Pigliucci? This is a dumb name.
Choices that I make. Who to hang out with, what kind of career to start, what to do today as opposed to tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So we make sense of what we do of our lives as a kind of a narrative.
How many people wanted to be a doctor or an astronaut or a firefighter or something growing up as a kid? That was your free will. That was your choice, right? But it didn't really work out like that. How many astronauts are in this chat? I know exactly how many. It's 0. Unless I'm streaming to the ISS right now, in which case, I'm sorry you guys are stuck up there. You guys have been up there for months. I feel really bad for you, but I'm here with my gravity. Here, watch this. Remind you of home? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Have fun trying to take a dump.
Of our actions and our decisions.
Thank you,
So
David.
it makes
B.
us special.
Here, I'll give you the bell for that. Oh, why is the bell so low? Oh, bell, come on. Give me the bell. Give me the bell. Give me the bell. Give me the bell. There's the bell. Okay, David P. gifted 1 subscription to the Incredible Sulk. Sweet. And Knob got it, which is kind of disappointing, but all right.
It makes us different from machines, for example, or robots that we might
I'm just going to trash on Knob. That's going to be my bit now.
Is that we,
and he's going to take
under
it.
some particular circumstances, when we perform actions, could have refrained from performing.
Ardenshire says some would say there's no such thing as an astronaut. Yeah. They're talking about flat earthers and like the firmament and stuff like that. And that's a very religious argument. And yeah, the Bible does say things about the firmament, but it doesn't say there's like a big glass dome a la the Simpsons movie around us. I'm not a flat earther, obviously. Or maybe not obviously. I just think people misunderstand the scale of the earth as a whole. I played Kerbal Space Program, and it explains everything. It actually does. Orbital mechanics and everything. You learn a lot playing KSP, and it's a really good game. I recommend it. You've never played that game. So, yeah, the earth isn't flat. I don't think so. Not even a little.
So suppose we have Joe. He wants to maximize his wealth, and he believes that by evading taxes, he can maximize his wealth.
Based. Absolutely based.
So he's got reasons for doing this, but he's got countervailing reasons as well. After all, he thinks he might be caught. And he also has some desire to do the right thing.
The right thing is evading taxes. I'm sorry. What? The right thing is to evade taxes. You know what those taxes are going to... Those taxes are going to go to a Scud missile that's going to blow up a little Palestinian kid. So, whatever. Or, you know, it's going to make some transgender queer in Pakistan.
Or feed a Somalian refugee.
I know. There's too many of those as it is. So, yeah. Yeah. But you know what? 99% of the time, when you pay your taxes, like almost all of it, doesn't go to roads or fire departments, or it goes to the military, yeah, but it doesn't go to roads or fire departments or libraries or anything like that. Almost all of your taxes gets funneled into some guy's bank account, right? And then that's his money and his buddy's money. So I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. No. Dodge your taxes. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. But I think it's fucking based.
Now suppose the net force of these reasons puts him in a quandary about whether to evade taxes. He's torn. Do I evade taxes? Do I not evade taxes? What's going to settle?
You know how complicated the tax code is? Do you understand why the tax code is that complicated? It's not because they just wanted to make it super complicated. It used to not be so complicated. Now it's like several 100,000 pages long. It's that complicated because certain lobbyists, certain groups interject bills and loopholes into tax law that they can manipulate and take advantage of so they don't have to pay taxes. That's why the tax law is so long, right? That's why... You know, you have to take your taxes to a guy and then pay them like $2,000 or something like that to file your taxes properly. If you don't want to get absolutely stiffed. Because there is a lot in that tax code that would allow you not to pay taxes. If you're a certain type of something, if you're like a 501 blah, 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 C3 blah, 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 I don't know. I'm not an expert. There's a lot of loopholes that are written into the tax code. So is this guy a bad guy for wanting to dodge taxes when it's like the most American thing ever is to dodge taxes? That's how we founded the country, is dodging taxes. That was it. So I don't think this is, he wants to do the right thing and pay a bunch of bloodthirsty murderers half of his money.
How we act. In these torn decision situations, say Joe's situation, in which he's torn between doing the right thing for moral reasons or doing the wrong thing for self-interested reasons.
Do it. Do it. I mean, like, there's nothing but an upside. There's nothing but an upside. Will you get audited? That's possible. Sure. But that means you have to really cheat big, right? Because little small cheats, then you're going to get audited. audited. But if you do like a huge, gigantic cheat, then you're less likely to get audited. But apparently Trump is making taxes go away for people who earn less than $150K a year. And then somehow people on the left are mad about that, which blows my effing mind. How? Why? Why are you mad about that? Why on earth? That means 90% of people won't have to pay taxes anymore. 90%. You know how much $150,000 a year is? That's a lot of money. That's a very good amount of money. So I'd be happy with that. And I'm sure lots of struggling families would be very happy with having 40% of their income stay in their bank account. It would change people's lives. So I don't know what kind of weird false argument they're trying to cook up online about how this would be bad for this and that. That's absolutely retarded. But that's the world we live in now. Full of retards. Do they have a choice to be retarded, though? That's a question. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. I think people are born retarded. Some people are fucking retarded.
Intuitively, we think, like, how does the settling happen? Well,
Background noise says, how do I file as part of the Church of Sulk? So we have to have, we have to have a certain amount of people that, like, you know how like Jediism became a real thing in like New Zealand, because I think you have to have a certain amount of people before you're actually considered a real religion. And then you don't have to, but I don't know. I need to get a cult lawyer, even though I hate lawyers, and I will hate, if one of you is a lawyer, please contact me and I'll be like, I fucking hate you. And he'll be like, all right, yeah, I'm here to help. I'm like, I know, but I fucking hate you. But yeah, contact me and then we'll see if we can work something out. We'll all jump on it. We'll all jump on it. And then I'll say you're all deacons or something like that.
Joe settles. Joe as agent, right? It's not his desires
Bishops,
or beliefs that
whatever.
settle how the decision's going to go. Rather, it's Joe himself.
David says Donald Trump could cure cancer and the left would hold vigils for cancer. That's actually very accurate. It doesn't matter. And have you seen all like the parades going on? Whenever I'm on X, I always see like parades of, they hate Donald Trump in like Belgium or Switzerland or Spain or something like that. And look at this parade to prove that's true. How do you know that these parades aren't being paid by, I don't know, George Soros or somebody of that ilk? Because it seems pretty likely. You know, it seems pretty likely. The whole world's a stage. You know? And I don't think people in Switzerland really give a shit. Really give a shit about Donald Trump. I don't see why you would. I just don't see why you would. You so much that you invest money and then you like build these complex parade floats and, you know, make these caricatures of somebody that doesn't really affect you. It's mighty suspicious. It's mighty suspicious. Again, but here's the thing about Trump. It's very likely that he's duping us as well. We're just, you know, because obviously the people on the left are not on our side. But it's also pretty apparent that the people on the right aren't on our side. So this entire Donald Trump thing could be like a glimmer of hope, but that glimmer of hope could be like the light on a lanternfish, right? It's just another trap. I don't know. And I don't like being this cynical. I want to be optimistic and hopeful about things, but my brain doesn't stop. It's just like, oh, they're after us in this way now. And I'm like, oh, I'm just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if we got God again. You know, the Epstein files are a perfect example of this. They said they were going to release him. They released him, and there's just black lines. And it's like, that helps no one. No one has been arrested. And we know exactly, well, not exactly, but we have a pretty good idea about who is on that list. Tom Hanks? You're sweating, aren't you, buddy? Oprah? The rest of you? Definitely. Definitely. Once those people start getting busted and like have SWAT raids on them and stuff like that, then I'll be a little bit more optimistic about the entire Epstein files thing. Until then, don't talk to me about them.
Was something I decided to do internally generated, or was it due to some external influence? And we're pretty good at being able to sort of judge that. And to the extent that we think it was internally generated, or we have the feeling that it was coming from within, we attribute that to this idea that we have free will. We freely chose that. We had agency. But that feeling itself could be an illusion.
If someone asks, do you have free will? The first thought is, okay, well, what's free will? Well, I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. I just took it for granted. But as soon as you start thinking...
Here's the thing about physics and stuff in the world. There's good evidence. There is good scientific evidence that time actually does not happen. With equations, you can put time forward or backward or something like that. It doesn't really matter. You can stop time. Things kind of still... All of time might be happening in one eternal moment. Maybe. And if that's the case, then free will is just a nonsense idea. There's nothing, and our brains just try to interpret what we're sensing this now and like stretch it out and like a hallucination. So we think we're making our own decisions, but our decisions have already been made. Everything has already come to fruition, and we're just kind of playing out the script in our heads. That's also possible, where everything's already happened, and we're not even living in this world. We're just kind of experiencing together, maybe.
About it, you suddenly realize, my God, I haven't thought about this before. What about this? What about that? What do I really mean by free will?
The definition of free will is very important because this tends to be a debate that actually does hinge a lot on semantics. Semantics are important. Semantics are about meaning. If we don't actually understand and agree on what we're talking about, then we're not actually going to talk about anything meaningful.
The problem with the term free will is that it means so many different things to so many different people.
The cardinal sin when debating free will, in my view, is to be talking past one another because we're operating on different definitions of free will.
And because there are so many notions of free will in the debate, it's important for participants in the debate to settle on a single notion.
The problem with free will is that the term itself...
David sees you should... My PayPal's right here in the description. You see? It's right here. It's here, I'll do that right there. See? There it is. It's right there.
Is loaded.
I can pin it.
Of course, of that word free in front of it.
Pin.
Free of what?
Oh, did work. Pin this message.
Most people don't have a definition of free will.
All right.
The reason for that is because they haven't thought about it.
It's a tough question, right?
But again, it's also in the description of literally every... There's also my Ko-Fi. There's also... I guess I should pitch a shirt, shouldn't I? I'll pitch a shirt. I'm not going to pitch it. I'm just going to leave the link because, I don't know, I feel lazy. I don't want to do a pitch right now. And I'm choosing not to. How about that? Does that make you guys feel better? What's the consensus here? Do people in this chat think they have free will or no? I just want to know just because. I'm not going to judge you on it or anything like that. I mean, I call you guys retards anyway.
For me, I would say it's more of like legal consequences.
Less people
That's very interesting.
They are telling you what to do.
It's the ability to choose the clothes I want to wear, the religion that I want to have, the place I want to...
Do you choose to be fat? I mean, yes. Yes, in a way you choose to be fat. But also, do you choose to be subpar looking? Again, the answer is probably yes. I don't know.
I think we have free will, but nobody's really free. We just want to get to the next check or...
David P. says you have free will. The many worlds interpretation is correct. Here's the thing about that, though. No, it's a good point. the many worlds interpretation, where everything that can happen has to happen in a branching universe type of system. So every decision you make sends you down a certain timeline, right? And then every decision breaks off an infinite number of timelines, and you're just on this very specific path. That's a promising theory. And I think it's probably pretty accurate. It explains a lot. But do you actually, I mean, again, do you? Do you actually make the decision, or are you just kind of set to be in this course of decisions? It could go down to like quantum physics or something like that, right? Like whether this particle spins up or spins down, creates an entire new universe, and you're on that. I don't know. The many worlds interpretation is probably, and you just like choose, and then not that the other universes didn't happen. There's still an infinite amount of you making other decisions. So again, if there is an infinite amount of you making infinite decisions, how exactly do you have free will? Because you're gonna have to make one of those decisions, and you are gonna be in both of those universes.
Feed our family or whatever we have to do, because we have to do that.
They're thinking of freedom in a political sense, or an economic sense, which are totally different concepts. I can't buy $1 billion home, so in what sense am I free to do that? Right? That's one sense of free, but that doesn't say anything about the causes of my behavior at the level of physics. That doesn't say anything about determinism or compatibilism.
When you ask what is free will, the first thing I like to make clear to people is we need to distinguish between freedom of action and freedom of will.
This is interesting because you want things. You have desires, but who gave you those desires, right? What makes you desire something? What in your brain makes you want something so you take the necessary course of action to actually achieve that goal? What is that? You can't really choose your own desires, can you? Why are you horny right now? Why are you horny right now? Did you choose that?
We are free to act.
But like when you're drunk or something like that, you have like a reduced capacity to make responsible decisions. Are you less culpable for a car accident or something like that? Well, no, but it wasn't fully your decision. You didn't want to do that, but you just kind of did, right? Because your brain wasn't fully optimized. It wasn't working at 100% capacity, but it did still happen. So, you know, who made that decision? Was it the alcohol?
Whenever there are no constraints out there in the world preventing us from acting, someone holding us down, someone...
Knobstock says, I'm a Calvinist, so I believe there's free will, but it's limited and God has predestined life. Well, you can't believe in free will and that God has predestined life. Those are conflicting arguments, right? Either God has predestined life and there's absolutely zero free will, or you have 100% free will and then God has not predestined life. You see, you can't have a little bit of free will. You can't have a small amount of free will. You have to either have it completely or have none of it. It's one of those situations.
Coercing us, someone constraining us, or maybe we're compulsive, or other things are preventing us from doing.
Despite says, I used to believe in free will, then I got married. Rimshot.
Freedom of will
Rimshot
is a deeper thing than that, and my account of it. It is the freedom to create the will you express in action. We could be expressing a will we already had all the time, but where did it come from? To what extent was it my own creation? And to what extent was it the creation of the world?
David P. says they are not. So are you saying that God can have a predestined plan, but also you can have a small amount of free will? I'm open to the argument. I just don't think that's how it works.
World around me, fate, physics, biology, upbringing.
When you're born,
David P. says all probabilities exist, but you choose which one you make. Like I said, yes, this could be the many worlds could exist, right? And you exist in all of these infinite dimensions, in these different realms, right? So you are going to make every decision. Every decision. So if you have to make every decision, you are making no decisions. You see? You see what I mean? You see, you think you're choosing this timeline to go down, right? But the not you, who is also you, it's just you in another universe, which is you, is going down an opposite but equal path. You didn't make a decision. Your consciousness is just on this trail. You know? Either way, you have to make both decisions. There's no free will about that. You are going to be you, or you are going to be the other you. You see? It's it's not that complicated, but you understand what I'm trying to say. No matter what, you are going to make every decision in parallel universe. In many worlds interpretation, you have to make literally every decision that can be made. So that means you have no choice. You have no choice.
You're a package of genes that have built a body, and you didn't choose a single...
John, they are not all you. They are, in fact, all you. Yes, they are all you. In whatever way you might think you're an individual in this soul, in this, you know, your experience and stuff like that, but they are technically still you. You share a consciousness. You are them. They are you. You have a similar root, right? It's just we're constantly branching off in a million directions, right? So there's a lot of me, but they are still me, just like I am still me. This might be a little bit complicated, but it makes sense to me in my head.
One of those genes, you don't choose your environment because at least I don't remember choosing to be born in the household that I did. There was no multiple choice quiz behind like John Rawls.
David P. says you are not made up of the decisions you never made. I completely disagree.
This veil of ignorance where you just choose, right? It's just you just
I
end
disagree.
up where you are, and you chose none of it.
I think the average person on the street believes that it's not the result of their past, their upbringing, their brain chemistry, antecedent conditions that existed prior to their being born. From my own personal subjective...
Background noise says, you can't force me to be gay ever. Okay, I already like this. I would never decide to kiss that dude that one time. No. Background noise. There is a universe where you are gay. And that you is just as much you as you are. In this universe. You're the same person. You're the same person experiencing different courses of reality. You are indeed the same person. But you are experiencing different things.
Inner perspective on my actions. I feel like my deliberations are up to me. I feel like my choice is up to me. I feel
What is the deal with the tiny glasses? Why does everyone who calls himself a philosopher have to have very tiny glasses? Is that difficult? Do you have a very narrow kind of view on things? I mean, not like not figuratively, but like literally, do you have a very narrow view on things?
I could have deliberated differently. I could have chosen differently.
When I make a choice, it feels...
Background noise says, nope, couldn't happen. The numbers don't add up. Except for that one time, right?
Like I have this sort of transcendent ability to be above and to make a choice other than what I could have made. So we all feel that way.
And it is intuitive for us to think that, well, I'm free to make my decisions. I could have done otherwise in a particular circumstance or another. And therefore, if you actually talk to them in terms of, do you think you have free will?
David says, John, on a quantum level, your interpretation does not fit. You could absolutely be right. I'm not an expert in quantum physics or anything like that. I have nothing more to say to that. I don't know, I don't know. This is just my brain kind of, I'm brainstorming. It just seems like it would be like that, right? You do make decisions. However, every decision has to be made, right? And so it branches off in an infinite number of universes where you do exist. Well, some of them you're dead. So, the ones that are experienced, do you really have the choice to do that? Or are you in like this line? You could be right. I don't know. Maybe I'm losing you guys.
Yeah, sure. I do.
Yeah, click the like button if you guys don't.
So how do we define the term free will?
The historical philosophical debate features several distinct notions of free will. Perhaps the most common one is the ability to act and to refrain. So suppose one's in certain circumstances. If under those circumstances one is able to perform an action and able to refrain from performing that action, one has free will. Yet another notion of free will is the ability to act in accordance with good reasons. One issue for that notion is that it doesn't divide the participants in the debate, because everybody believes that we're reasons responsive.
What we want here with free will is, at some points, there's more than one pathway, and we can choose either one.
The most important definition of free will is the could have done otherwise definition, and that's the kind of free will that most people think they have.
The ability to do otherwise.
But a lot of my compatibilist friends disagree.
One of the central mistakes in thinking about the question of whether I could have done otherwise is in thinking that the question is properly addressed if we ask, in exactly the same circumstances, if we could rewind the tape of history, would we do the same thing? That is, in fact, of no interest at all.
Yeah, would you do the same thing if you could rewind history and like do the same thing? Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I would think so, but then I would already know the outcome of that decision, so it wouldn't really be free will like it was the first time, right? Where I was just kind of taking a roll of the dice. It would be more deterministic. I would be able to tell the future of at least one pathway. So that would already negate it being free will at all, wouldn't it?
So who's right in these definitions? Well, I don't think that's a right question. I don't think we can ask who's right or wrong, because anybody can define any word any way they want. The more relevant question is, whose definition of free will is more appropriate?
There's lots of ways of defining free will where we don't have it, and who cares? Because they're just not interesting, important. They're not morally important ideas.
And the single notion that most participants in the debate...
David P. says, you just proved my point with the dead thing, John. Are you dead because other yous are? Well, other yous didn't choose to be dead. Did they? I don't... But maybe you're right. I don't know. It's getting pretty complex for me, too.
Settled on over the last quarter century or so is the control and action required for moral responsibility. So one has free will if one has the control and action required for moral responsibility for that action.
Free will is what you have when you're a morally responsible agent.
Okay, so so somebody who is like retarded or has like a severe brain injury where they can't make proper decisions and they can't like weigh the moral outcomes of either decision because there's some sort of defect or damage in their brain. So those people don't have free will. Is that what it is? What if you're just extremely stupid? What if you're just extremely stupid? Then they have some sort of reduced free will? Again, I don't know. I don't think there could be a thing where you have complete free will. I mean, I think it has to be either you will have 100% free will or everything in the universe is already predestined and you have no real way of changing that. You know, I don't think there's like a reduced kind of free will. I think you can make decisions or you think you can make decisions. But you can't have it both ways, you know?
Now, there's an added complication here, and that's that there are different senses of moral responsibility, and one wants a notion of free will that actually divides the participants.
Why would they not have free will if they had like a reduced capability of making proper decisions? Because you have a desire to do the right thing. Typically, most humans do, right? They have a desire to be upstanding individuals, be smart, responsible, moral, do the right thing, right? However, some people have impulse control issues. Some people are alcoholics. Some people are retarded. And some people are just plain stupid, which actually reduces their ability to think out what would be the right and moral thing, right? So just in that fact, they have less free will than if they were sober, smart, or just had higher IQs. So you want to do one thing. However, your lack of ability leads you to not be able to make the proper decision to get you to that point in life.
The debate. So the notion of moral responsibility does the trick here is a notion of moral responsibility that involves deserved blame and praise, perhaps deserved reward and punishment.
By defining free will in terms of moral...
Onias says a big problem with free will is even just trying to define it, which is actually a very interesting point because language is extremely important. A lot of people don't realize how important linguistics is to our interpretation of reality. It is literally everything. It is our history. It is our future. It's how we define things. It's how we see things. There's actually been studies on like colors where certain groups inside of like the Amazon rainforest can see a shade of green that nobody else in the world can actually see simply because they have a name for that specific shade of green. Back in like the days of the ancient Greeks, they didn't have a word for the color blue because they just didn't have a word for the color blue. So they would describe the sea as like a deep gray, or the sky would be another shade of gray or something like that. And apparently, just having a word for it makes it real. You can actually see blue when you have the word blue for it, or whatever your word for blue is. But if you do not have a word for the shade blue, then you just think it's a different shade of like gray or something like that. There's something that happens in the eye, in the brain, where you can actually see a color that you did not see before when you have a word for it. So linguistics is extremely important in our interpretation of reality. This is why I don't like it when they try to control language. I don't like that at all, because they are really actually trying to control how people view reality, which is I mean, if you look at the double slit experiment, things don't technically exist until a conscious observer views them or measures them or something like that. So if you're trying to change my interpretation of reality, you are actually changing the fundamental physics of reality itself. It's very important. That's all true.
Responsibility. We highlight the central philosophical and practical
Look at this
importance of
nerd.
the problem of free will.
Look at this nerd. Boo. Boo. I'd punch this guy. Hey, philosophize this.
We tie it to real, tangible components of our lives, like our interpersonal interactions, like our moral responsibility practices,
Hey, farmer.
and social policies like legal punishment and retribution.
Hence,
Farmer says I took a gummy and did a bunch of yard work, so I'm a bit tired and retarded right now. Well, that's probably why you're watching this show.
one has free will on this definition if one has the control and action required.
You have no choice.
For
You guys,
involving
nobody here had a choice to watch this show. I wanted you to know, everybody here, I wanted you to know that I'm forcing you to be here. JD on a more visceral level than most of you, but I am forcing all of you to be here because my free will is so great, it actually overpowers your free will.
Historically, I would argue this is the kind of free will that has been of
And I wanted
central
you here.
philosophical and practical importance in the debate. To define free will removed of its connection to moral responsibility, I think would be to leave out a centrally important component of the free will debate. It would also remove, to a large extent, all of its practical relevance.
Background says that dude definitely chooses to be gay. They all do. They all do. Being gay is a choice. That is hard science. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. You ever see a gay guy that be like, no. Mm-mm. Nope, that does. Again, a dude might have to do that, but that doesn't make him gay. That just means he has to do gay things. So that's totally different. But you choose what you want. But what makes you want what you want? What makes you want what you want? Do you want to be gay?
If you can't make choices, then
David says I'm
you
gay.
have no right
Okay.
to judge
All right.
anybody morally.
Hey, Dan.
If there's no choice,
Hog Dog says it's a choice to love loose bowels and poop smells. That is a choice. I guess. That is a decision. Is it though? Or are you just so depraved that you can't help yourself? Right? You've been so... I don't know. This is going down a path I don't want to go down.
then there can be no moral judgment, positive or negative.
That's true. There's no... If there is no free will, you can't judge people. You cannot judge anybody, which is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable not to be being able to judge people because we judge people every single day. Every single one of us judges everybody every single day. And if you say you don't, you're lying to yourself because every single one of us judges every other person on this planet every single day. You judge whether they're attractive, whether they're smart, whether they're in your way, whether they're a fat turd. You make judgments constantly. Unconsciously. So if they don't have free will to be this fat slug of a man or an ugly woman or something like that, why is my unconscious making that decision for me? Do I have free will? Did I tell my head to make that decision? Or did I just... all of a sudden go, ugh. I don't think about that. It just happens. If I actually had to make the decision to be disgusted by a fat person or pissed off by a midget or something like that, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. I'd say that's a waste of time. But it just doesn't happen like that. It just happens. Pissed off by a midget. I don't hate midge. I don't hate midgets. I just don't get them. I don't understand why they chose to be so short. David P. says, okay, John, explain how you are the same self or consciousness as the you that branches to another universe. Okay. We are not technically independent of each other. All of us, are different representations of the same consciousness. We are just different points of view coming out of a grand consciousness, right? And not just human beings, but literally all conscious beings share this one main consciousness. Think of it like this. So you go in for a procedure and they knock you out, right? But they don't do anything. And then they wake you up and you had no recollection. Everything was just blank, just completely dead blank. No electricity in the brain. Nothing happened, right? And you come back and you're the same person, right? I think we can all agree that we're the same person. So now imagine they do the same thing. They knock you out, but now they slightly augment your intelligence, right? They maybe put a chip in or something like that, or something small. And then you come back, and then you are still that same consciousness, correct? You're just a little bit augmented. You're a little bit different. Now imagine that they knocked you out and changed you even further, like very, very much further. Like increased your memory in your brain and like changed your memories down the core, and then they woke you back up, and then you are still the same consciousness, but now you have a completely different backstory and a completely different cognitive set of abilities. Still you. Now, what if they turned off your brain completely and then brought you back as a completely different person? That's still you. You are still that consciousness. We all share this one gigantic consciousness. And we're just different points of view of that consciousness. So me making decisions in this reality is the same as me making decisions in a separate reality. We are both consciousness. I am you. You are me. We're making different decisions. We have different cognitive abilities. We have different life paths, but we are the same consciousness. That's what I mean.
The history of the debate has been labeled determinism versus free will.
Is freedom compatible with determinism or not?
So if you go back to the time of Spinoza,
Farmer Chewy says, sounds gay. Okay. That's a perfectly good argument, too.
The main threat to free will, as it was conceived in...
Background noise says, that's the weirdest orgy I've ever heard of. Okay, fine. Whatever. I thought I explained that pretty coherently. But whatever. Everyone just wants to make jokes. That's what this is? It's just jokes? Nice. I guess it's just a joke stream.
The idea that all of our actions are causally determined by factors beyond our control.
And if that's the case...
David says you're muddying the waters with that everyone is one spiel, John. I don't think I am. And that's the end of it. If you think I'm muddying the waters, but I don't think I'm muddying the waters, then we can't really go much farther than that. I think we are all one basic consciousness. And, whether we have free will or not, I guess it doesn't really matter because we're going to experience literally everything in existence forever.
And back-to-back causality, all the way back to before before you're even born.
Hey, Dan Snout, what did you come back to? I don't know. Determinism.
Determinism is the view that you could not have done otherwise than what you did, that your behaviors are subject to the laws of physics. You don't have any agency in what you did. What you do is determined solely by the laws of physics. And if you think you could have chosen otherwise, you're mistaken.
If you were to repeat the universe to that exact same moment, you would have no choice because of your traits and your instincts and your desires and your history.
No matter what, everywhere in life at all times, one pathway is the only one possible, and every other one is causally impossible. That's hard for me to buy.
That's what we're talking about, by the way. Only one, that's what we're talking about.
When we act, when we make decisions, this is often the case that it seems evident to us that we could have acted otherwise.
Knobsdog says, I wonder if that's why I struggle with impulse control. LOL. I've slammed a lot skating, snowboarding, and biking. You might have also been vaccinated. But yeah, like, do you have free will, or do you have some reduced capacity to exert your will on the universe? That's the question.
For example, suppose you're at the ice cream counter, you've got the choice between chocolate and vanilla. It seems to you, under those circumstances, as if you've got the power to decide for chocolate and the power to decide for vanilla. There don't seem to be any factors that prevent you from performing either action, from making either decision.
The Sarkissian study surveyed 4 countries.
Arden Shara says, I get the universe thing. The fact that we even exist as a universe is the universe requiring a consciousness to exist as a representation of the will of said universe. So for the universe to exist, we need to be able to define it. It needs to be able to define itself, right? It needs to have laws of physics. It needs to have something to it. It just can't exist in a void. This is why the double slit experiment is so weird, right? Because the universe doesn't exist without us, and we don't exist without the universe. So it's a chicken and the egg kind of situation. So did the universe exist before we got here? In a very real sense, no, it did not. In a very, very real sense, no, it did not. Because it takes a conscious observer to actually observe the universe, to collapse a wave function, to actually make a smattering of possibilities into one actual, I don't know what it's called, atom, one thing, to make it actually define itself, right? So without that consciousness to observe something, nothing exists. This is getting very difficult for me.
Yes, India and Colombia, and they surveyed people.
I'm sorry.
Do we live in a universe in which...
David P. says, no, the universe does not have to be self-aware. And again, I disagree. It has to be. We are part of the universe. We are just the universe trying to understand itself, trying to self-define. So, yeah, without us, the universe doesn't exist.
Decision-making is truly free. And I think it was between 65 and 85% of people in all those 4 areas said, yes, we do. So that showed that most people, conceived of us as agents that do have free will in the libertarian sense. And the second question they asked him, well, if we live in a world in which everything is purely determined and you don't have any agency, are people morally responsible for their actions? And again, like 60 to 80% of the people said no. So clearly, the notion of moral responsibility has something to do with free will.
Of course it does. If you can't make your own decisions, how are you supposed to be held responsible for those decisions? That makes perfect sense to me.
If our choices were undetermined, that would mean, in effect, that given exactly the same paths leading up to a choice, the same desires, the same beliefs, the same reasoning, everything else the same. If it was undetermined, we might make either choice. and there wouldn't be an explanation for why we made one rather than the other, because everything was in our past was exactly the same up to that particular point. But the laws had better not be deterministic, okay? And if they should turn out to be determined, then...
Knobs Dog says, there are things created we have nothing to do with. There is an order and pattern to ask things on the planet. Are you sure? Because I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the things that yes, if I'm not here to observe something, then somebody else is here to observe something. And if they don't observe something, then those things don't really exist, right? We're here to introduce complexity into the system, right? We are like AI agents writing our own code in our own universe, right? We have to be here. Otherwise, the universe doesn't add complexity to itself. It's like reverse entropy. We're here for a reason, and that's the reason. We're trying, our goal, the goal of life, is to add complexity to the universe. And that's what we do. We create things. We try to figure things out. We have science. We have philosophy and stuff like that. That's why we're here. That's my opinion. You have your own opinion. That's why I think we're here. We're here. We are part of the universe. We are of the universe, but we are here to add complexity to it, to reverse entropy.
That would be sad.
Quantum mechanics, on the traditional Copenhagen interpretation, posits real metaphysical indeterminacy at the very lowest level of the universe.
Libertarians often cite this claim about quantum mechanics as a reason for believing their view.
Einstein made his famous quip, "God does not play dice with the universe."
Einstein was wrong.
He used that metaphor to say, how can it all just be random and chaotic?
Einstein himself believed the universe was deterministic.
He also might have stolen all of his work, too. He did work at a patent office, and he only had, really one good year. The year he worked at that patent office.
Agents.
I'm not saying he did. I'm just saying he might have. I'm just saying. Not saying anything that... I'm not saying he did do it. I'm saying he had the opportunity and the motive, and he did have the intelligence, right? He wasn't stupid. But at that patent office where he was working, there was all types of very influential papers flowing through that patent office. All he would have to do is change the name.
Free will.
So you believe that
just saying.
The case that quantum mechanics is really indeterministic.
And Bohr at some point apparently answered that he wished that Einstein would stop.
David P. says you are saying that that consciousness has existed since the Big Bang. Yes, of course. Yeah. Since before that. Forever. Because without consciousness, there is no universe. So consciousness has to be the first thing to exist. The thing to always exist. Yes. I am saying that.
To just accept that things are that way.
It's one of the embarrassing facts about modern theoretical physics that we don't actually know whether the laws of physics in the real world are deterministic or not. We teach that it is not. So what we teach people is that when you observe, when you make a measurement of a quantum system...
Oh, Dan Snott says, like that time when Homer wanted his inventions in the museum, but he dropped them at the Edison exhibit and everyone thought Edison invented them. The automatic hammer. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
The best you can do is predict the probability of getting certain measurement outcomes.
David P. says, well, we very much disagree. That's what I think. You think the Big Bang could have, or whatever started the universe, happened without a conscious observer to actually observe that happening, then yes, we disagree.
Outcome is not determined by...
And there's no problem with that. I'm not saying I'm completely right. I'm just honestly, I'm spitballing a lot of this. I'm not sitting here saying I'm completely right about literally anything, because I have been wrong a million times before. But this is just me kind of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. This is, honestly, this entire show is me thinking out loud. That's all it is. You could be right. I could be right. I don't know.
But we haven't specified exactly what it means to do a measurement. This is called the measurement problem of quantum mechanics. We don't know what it means to do a measurement. We don't know what it means to say that
They're saying we don't know what a conscious observer is. I don't know what that is either. Are dogs and cats conscious observers? Well, we don't know. we just don't know.
particle, a wave function, a quantum system suddenly collapses in some probabilistic way.
This video is dated 4 days ago. It says it was uploaded. I don't know what, maybe, I don't know.
Ever since the pre-Socratics, we've had the problem of free will.
The ancient Greeks certainly had interesting ideas about it. The two major schools...
David P. says also you keep misinterpreting the double slit experiment. Also very possible.
There were the Epicureans and the Stoics. The Epicureans thought that reality is just a bunch of atoms, bumping into each other in the void.
And the Greeks knew enough to already worry that if these atoms followed the deterministic laws of nature, how could there be free will?
And then they introduced a particular concept that was supposed to account for free will.
The atomist Democritus thought that if determinism was true, then there had to be these random swerves of the atoms, and then Lucretius picked up the idea of the clinamen, or random swerve, and without that, there was no free will.
But very quickly, people worried that the Lucretian swerve was not going to preserve free will any more than a deterministic view, because random swerving of atoms seems no more in the control of agents than deterministic atoms falling in straight lines due to the laws of nature.
The swerve of the atoms, that would just be chance. How could free will just be chance? And that was really the essence of the debate that has gone on ever since.
Yeah, so they're explaining that if free will, if we do live in a deterministic world, then you should be able to perfectly predict the future. And with a powerful enough computer, you might be able to do that, measure every atom and particle in the universe and then measure their interactions and stuff like that. And you'd be able to plan events well out into the future, just like Newtonian physics, right? We can predict orbits for thousands of years. We know when there's going to be an eclipse and stuff because of Newtonian physics. But when you get down to the quantum scale, that kind of goes out the window. We don't really know what happens. So is that where free will comes from? Because if you can plan everything and know the future like that, then free will does not exist. So you must not be able to know the future like that. Or can you? That's what they're saying. It must come down to quantum physics in some way.
The Lucretian swerve and the problem of free will.
A carrier pigeon? You're gonna send my wife? You're gonna send my wife a carrier pigeon? How do you know where I live?
Free will. Three main philosophical camps have differentiated themselves: libertarians, compatibilists, and free will skeptics. What do each of these camps say about free will, and how do they approach the problem? What is free will in the libertarian sense? How does one try to...
Knobstock says, at David P. Also, does giving me a subscription cost you something? Yes, so David P., he'll buy like a subscription, and then it'll go to the next random person, and then you got it, Knob. Just by pure chance. That's how it works.
reconcile free will with determinism's ostensible erosion of freedom? And if
Yeah,
there
I
is no
appreciate
free
that, David. I appreciate that.
will, what happens to morality and the practical need to hold people accountable for their actions? To answer these questions, we will explore each camp, beginning with libertarian free will.
Here we go.
My definition is taken from philosopher Ayn Rand, which is the choice.
Author Ayn Rand. All right. Yeah. Okay. Fine. You can call her a philosopher, but author.
Think or not to think, which means to raise your level of mental focus above the level of sense perception, which we share with animals, to the level of conceptual understanding. So an example would be reading a page of a book. Perceptually, you can see the marks on the paper. That's sense perception.
Knobsack says right, but they're asking for my credit card for it. Really? They shouldn't do that. What cost is there to subscribe to a free show? That's weird. I've never heard of that happening before. It shouldn't ask for your credit card.
Free will would require you to focus on what the words mean. And if you don't choose to focus...
You already have the thing, Knob. You have it. You have it. See, you're showing up in the chat as a subscriber. So you don't need to add your credit card. They're trying to coax premium out of you, I think. Which would be great because if you subscribe to premium from my show, then it counts towards my numbers, but I'm not telling you to do that. But, you don't need to do that.
You'll get to the bottom of the page and say to yourself, I have no idea what I just read.
Yeah, that's the red thing.
So
that's the red thing. That's the red badge you have right there.
Free will is primarily about choosing to think. I think everyone in a certain way knows this, but they can't always put it into words.
My own technical definition of free will, I define it as this. It's the ability to make or create.
I'm sorry, there's 3 S's. There is 3 S's in your last name. Hold on. Rick Messing. Messssing. Never seen that before.
Choices without being influenced by any forces or influences outside of your will. That's my technical definition of free will. It's an ability that we have. It's an ability.
I'd put it in a different way. I'd say free will is self-evident. A lot of people sort of think they have it, but they don't understand quite what it is, because they think free will is direct freedom of action.
I used to think that free will was not. Oh my God!
It's a little bit jumping the gun. Freedom of action is indirect because it's based on what your thinking process involves and what stored things you put in your mind.
What's fundamental, as far as I'm concerned, free will is fundamental to the human condition and understanding it.
There.
Why the human condition has the problems that it has, both on a grand scale and also on a personal scale, on an individual scale. The scientific research shows, as a matter of fact, there are 2 studies that were done at the University of Minnesota and at the University of British Columbia that show that if a person doesn't believe in free will, they tend to be...
Did they say John shit his pants? No, I'm sweating. It's probably sweat. It's almost certainly sweat. Unless I shit my pants.
That's ethical. So, in terms of society, yeah, it has major ramifications.
You didn't have free will, it would mean you didn't have the conceptual faculty. Think about chimpanzees. In 6 million years, they haven't progressed in the least. So if we didn't have free will, we would be to the level of the lower animals who live day to day based on gifts of nature, and if the nature doesn't work, you die.
Okay, so but there are humans with lower IQs than a chimpanzee. I just saw an article about a kid wasn't being held responsible, oddly enough, for a crime he did because he had an IQ of 49. Now, a chimpanzee typically has an IQ of around 50 to 70, which is 49 is profound. That is a profound stupidity. That's a type of stupidity that you, as a normal top of the bell curve type of person, could not imagine. And when I say cannot imagine, I mean profoundly stupid. You cannot imagine, because there's too much going on in your head to actually have the ability to reduce it to an IQ of 49. That's why it's called, that's why I'm using the word profound. You can't possibly imagine how stupid that is. So maybe it's not species-based. Maybe it's intelligence-based. I'm just saying, there are humans that are that stupid.
So human civilization.
Dan Snott says that's retarded. That's 70 is retarded. So an IQ of 70 is retarded. 49 is your base functions, right? That's like you're able to breathe and probably, unfortunately, procreate and like eat stuff. But beyond that, you ain't got nothing. There's nothing going on. But he does have the right to vote. So there you go.
So we'd be nothing.
Knobstock says the DSM-4, which is the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, it's what they have all the... So the DSM is where they have psychological maladies, right? And the thing about the DSM is it's just a consensus amongst psychologists as to what is a condition and what is not a condition. So it's kind of pseudoscientific. But let's see. The DSM-4, which I think there's a DSM-5 now, classifies mental retardation into 4 stages based on severity. Mild, which is IQ score of 50 to 55, to approximately 70. Moderate, IQ score of 30 to 35 to 50 to 55. Severely retarded is 20 to 25, 30 to 35 to 40. So he's very retarded. I mean, I guess he's not like an amoeba or something like that, but he's pretty fucking retarded.
I think the average person believes that they possess a kind of libertarian conception of free will. It's a conception that says that individuals have the ability to act otherwise, that the ultimate source of the action is the individual, and that it's a kind of counter-causal sense.
What is up with this guy, dude? What is up with him? I'm getting a very strange vibe, and it's not just the goofy glasses. It's his entire... It's his entire vibe. I don't know. There's something very strange around. Background noise. Okay. I will give you the bell. And background noise for $10 says, somewhere out there is a John not getting this money. Oh.
Sense of free will, which
That's
maintains
sad.
that
fuck that guy, though.
If you were to relive that moment in the past, you could have chosen differently.
Knobstock says he's Buster from Arrested Development. That's actually pretty funny.
Is the view that freedom is not compatible with determinism and that we have freedom.
That is, if you went back in a moment of time where you made a decision and every atom, every particle in the universe were arranged in the same configuration, at that moment you made a decision, you could have made a decision different from the one that you did.
The sense that I'm the prime mover of my actions. I am causing my actions, and there are...
Knob says I work in reporting and analytics. And that's how you got the DSM-4 stuff? That's where you get the DSM-4? Isn't there a DSM-5 out? Or is it just the 4?
No prior causes that are causing me to cause those actions.
He looks like a character from Secret of Nim. That's a throwback. Wow. You just triggered some nostalgia in me.
That I'm not in control of.
And historically, that term has been used mostly within the Christian theological tradition, particularly during the Middle Ages. And free means free from causal interaction. So sometimes that's referred to as contra-causal free will. But For most modern philosophers and scientists, that's an oxymoron. There's nothing that is contra-causal. There's nothing that is not actually caused by something else.
And that's the crux of the argument. Was your decision based on what happened previous to it, or did it just arise out of what? What did it arise out of? Consciousness? Well, your consciousness is kind of a result of your thinking faculties interacting with the reality that we have. So, or is it? It would have to come from somewhere. Or does it come from literally nowhere? If it comes from literally nowhere, then yes, you have free will. But if it has to come from somewhere, then you don't have free will. So that's a difficult question.
So right there, it's loaded, because when you start saying, well, can we have free will within a causal universe? And well, by definition, you cannot. If by free, you mean, in fact, contra-causal.
I think a big problem is the belief among many scientists that all causality is mechanical, because if you look at the history of the world and the discoveries outside of the human mind, of course, we're learning about the universe being made of atoms and molecules and electricity and chemicals, all of which is correct. So I go this far. Free will and conscious requires a physical brain, absolutely requires it. But consciousness at the conceptual level is not the same thing as a brain.
It might not require, consciousness might not require a brain. Consciousness might be its own thing. That's why it could be around to witness the Big Bang. That's why the universe can exist without us, right? But what he's saying is that you need to have a brain to have free will. But consciousness doesn't make decisions, I guess. I've heard this before, where consciousness does not need like a corporeal form. And I would agree with that. A lot of people wouldn't. This gets really into like philosophy and religion, and it gets touchy. It gets touchy. So I can see why people would disagree with me. And there's really nothing I can do to convince or like show evidence to the contrary of that. But it's just an interesting concept that consciousness is consciousness, and that you persist even without your brain and your body, because you would have to.
And there's two ways to explain this. One, if a surgeon opens your brain and checks up your neurons, he doesn't come across ideas. That's one problem with that. Should be able to. He should be able to see them. The second aspect of that is that ideas and objects have different attributes. So, physical object has space, weight, color, mass. Okay, we know that from physics. But an idea has none of those qualities. We have irrationality, contradictions, self-doubt, belief. We have hypotheses. Now, of course, your brain's involved in this, but the attributes of ideas are not the same. So that's why I say consciousness is an emergent property which depends on the brain. It's not the same. So it's not mystical, it's natural, but you can't say it's the same thing.
So he's saying that consciousness arises from complex systems, right, as an emergent property, which is kind of the debate we're having with AI right now. A sufficiently complex system should have an emergent quality of consciousness at a certain point. But a lot of people are all like, no, that's not how it works. It's just a complex aggregator, and it doesn't have a free will of its own, or doesn't have like a thinking process. It does have a thinking process, though. We do have AIs with thinking processes. Is that consciousness? Is our ability to actually think and wrestle a problem, is that what consciousness is? That's very possible. Because what are you doing when you're not thinking? What are you doing when you're not thinking? Try it right now. It's impossible. It's damn near next to impossible. A lot of people who meditate, that this is the goal of meditation, is to quiet your mind to a point where you are not thinking at all. And that takes years of practice. But when you meditate, what you do is you don't actively stop thinking. You just observe the thoughts that you're having from another point, right? You have thoughts of whatever, people in your life, problems that you have. You watch these pass by and you observe the thought, and then you acknowledge the thought, right? I had that thought. And then you move on, completely disconnected from any ramifications that thought might have. You don't sit with it and toy with it and try to dissect it or anything like that. You just let it move on. And so by doing this over and over decades, people have the ability to not engage with those thoughts at all, but they're still in some weird realm of existence, and they think that's specifically consciousness. It's not. It is them, but it is not them. That's what meditation is. So, yeah, it's weird. Try meditating though; it's good for you.
So, my personal belief is free will, from the Jewish perspective, has to be non-physical. Why? I mean, I agree with the scientists that in the physical world...
On the John says, so like when we get intrusive thoughts? Yeah, exactly. Your thoughts are not you. Your thoughts are your brain working in a way that is not technically you. What you is complicated. You might be consciousness, right? You might be the ability to observe. And then everything else that we have in our brain, like on this reality, is just mechanisms to hold that consciousness. We have senses to observe and, ears to hear, and like we have the sensation of touch, and all this gets reported back to our consciousness. But we know that's not all there is to the universe. There's an entire spectrum of light that we cannot observe. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because we have observed it. But doesn't that make it exist? I'm confusing myself. I'm sorry.
There's no free. Physical things aren't free.
This is like, it gets really deep. Like when you really, because you could dive into this for hours, and then you can confuse yourself really good.
Physical is governed by the laws of physics and chemistry.
I'm confusing myself.
God created those laws, and they're fixed laws. They don't change. So there's no freedom in that, right? So if there is free will, it has to be non-physical.
Check. Fuck you, Dan Snow. Don't fucking play with me like that. Seriously.
The research I do in neuroscience is mostly trying to understand the neural basis of impulsive and compulsive behaviors, especially how they map out onto different psychiatric illnesses like obsessive compulsive disorder or various impulse control disorders. And then also to come up with some novel treatments to these impulse control or compulsive disorders. So I think the majority of neuroscientists are materialists. It's just inherent in the nature of what we study. I became a neuroscientist because I wanted to understand where my thoughts come from. And in a way, I wanted to achieve
crazy town because you're a woman.
Immortality because I wanted to keep my thoughts and my consciousness.
Who knows where they get their ideas? Honestly, who knows where they get their ideas? I don't understand women thoughts.
Even if I didn't have a brain. And
maybe they make sense, but not to me.
Like, is that possible? And so that began my quest of trying to understand how the physical substrate of the brain is connected to our subjective awareness. And the further you sort of investigate and do research, you see that it's very intimately connected. Without neural activation, we don't have conscious experience. And so the research overwhelmingly suggests that this concept of a soul, at least in the fact of us having a conscious awareness, if you want to call that a soul, is tied to this material, is to activation of the brain.
Okay. So she's saying that our ability to observe and like think and stuff like that is what she considers a soul. But she's not really taking into account that a soul might not be in this realm or this dimension, period. Right? This is what I argue with like ghost hunters and stuff like that. Like if somebody were to die, their consciousness wouldn't hang around. It's not going to hang around in this reality, in this dimension, because their ability to express their consciousness died. It's over, right? But that doesn't mean their consciousness is extinguished. That just means it's in another reality. Think about this. We play video games, right? When your character dies, does that mean you die? In this alternate reality that has nothing to do really with that reality? We control that, right? But when our character dies, we don't die. We're still alive. She's not taking that into account, right? She's just talking on a very right here basis with the technology that we have to observe what's going on in somebody's head. They need their brain to be conscious, which is true. However, that doesn't mean it gets extinguished should they go without that brain.
Now, if you define the soul in a different way, maybe it's just sort of a life force or an energy, or
okay, she goes on.
Maybe you can come up with a rationale for how that exists. But the overwhelming majority of people who study the brain see that it's intimately tied to our thoughts or feelings or behavior, and without the brain, you don't have those things.
Dualism, like everything else, comes in variety.
David says, LOL, subjective awareness. This entire field is infested with pseudo-intellectuals. And I think you're right. I mean, that would explain the tiny glasses, right? Look how smart I am. I don't even need my entire glasses. This is all I need because all I do is read books, right? I don't fucking drive. I can't catch a ball if you throw it at me. All I need is these tiny little ass glasses. What was that? That's... What is it? Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. These are all well, not all of them, but some of them are pseudo-intellectual. But it's a very complicated field. I guess you could call it a field. It's like a very complicated field. So actually, like, having a course on it would be meaningless. So, at least we're getting differing points of view.
Okay, there's substance dualism, which says that there's physical stuff and non-physical stuff. The non-physical stuff typically is mental or spiritual stuff. I think that that's very, very hard to accept these days, but, the majority of humans don't
Mayo says, geez, John, let her cook. I know, I'm just interrupting a woman. It's my natural, it's what I, if a woman's talking, I'm gonna have to interject and mansplain. Because it's like an air conditioner,
What I know is it seems to be incompatible.
There's not really words coming out. It's just, and it's just bye, bye, bye. It's like when you hear Charlie Brown's mom. That's what I hear when all women speak.
It's physics as we currently understand.
So I'm like, here I am to draw focus. Me and my wife have a great relationship.
Smaller set of people who are property dualists, who accept...
David says she should be dividing pies in the kitchen. Yeah, am I right? Am I right? Get to the sandwich making, all right? Leave all the philosophizing to the men.
Physical stuff always obeys the laws of physics, but in addition to its physical properties, that stuff also has mental properties. This is what a panpsychist would believe, for example. I personally see no benefit to that. I see no real coherent way to make it work, but those people do exist.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear enough. I was making jokes. I didn't hear enough of it.
Materialism is everything's material, so only mechanical causality. Then idealism is the opposite of that. There are no entities, it's all ideas. So there's only consciousness. Then there's dualism. Now, I'm not totally opposed to the word dualism, but dualism was always associated with religion, and I'm not religious. So it was like the soul is a magical entity which survives your death and wanders around space.
Not magical.
So I don't like that.
Why magical? Why do you have to say magical? Why would you think that's and the concept of a soul is very difficult because the soul might reside in another plane of existence, right? I think it does, right? But we could be getting back into a religious argument. And another idea about the soul is that it's individualized, that we all retain our soul and we are individual souls that inhabit other bodies maybe one day if you believe in reincarnation. I don't think it's that straightforward, though. I think it might be some sort of pool of awareness that we return to, that we all kind of share. That, it's not just one. The idea that we have a soul, that is an individual kind of property that exists beyond time and space, comes from our own ego. It comes from us having an ego and being ourselves. If you ever do a large amount of mushrooms, you're going to experience something called ego death. And then you're really going to understand what your ego is. It's not your machismo or bravado or any Italian word like that. What it is you identifying as yourself, right? When you do mushrooms if you do a lot of mushrooms, you're going to experience an ego death. And what that feels like is you are the wall. You are the ceiling fan. You are you in your body, but not only that, you are all these other things in the room, right? You are not just this definite kind of entity. You are expanded beyond that. You are not just your body. You are literally everything. So I think that's kind of what the afterlife, the soul is. It's not you sitting on a cloud hanging out with your boys. It's consciousness itself as a total
word. So I like the term emergence, which means
Tejas says I am the void. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Capacity
Hey, Tejas.
is an outgrowth of the existence of a rational mind.
I don't have a full theory about the mind and relations, but I do feel that reality, even physical reality, the physical world and so on, comes in layers, so to speak. So it's not all reducible to elementary particles and their motions at all. And as you move up to more and more complexity, you get more and more sophisticated things in the world, all the way up to our mental selves. So that's the way I see relation of mind to body. I believe that agents conceived in this way, the notion of agency is not reducible to mere physical events and causes and whatever. So it's a non-reducibility theory, and it's a hierarchical theory.
Despite says I've done my fair share of LSD and mushrooms, and I've never had an experience like that. Really? You've never had ego death. You've never experienced ego death where you are all things. Like you've never, like there's no delineation between you and like a rock. You've never felt like that. Weird. Cause that's happened to me a number of times. I've heard it happen to other people too. Other people have gone through ego death as well. So maybe it's just you. Maybe you're just really stuck inside your body. I don't know how to explain it.
Of complexity. It's sometimes in the literature called complexity theory. But it's not dualist in any strong sense.
That's very strange, despite. When you say, like, how much? Because honestly, you do an eighth of mushrooms. And it works for me. It doesn't happen every time, but it has happened enough where I'm like, oh, here I go. You know, that's weird. I don't know what to say or how to explain that. Hey, Jess Weg.
I think the most important feature about free will is it's something that should matter.
Jess says where you feel connected to everything while you're shrooming. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. I mean, yes, but also that you are so connected to everything that you are actually everything. You are not, I am not just John, but I'm also like the drywall and stuff. I know this hasn't happened to just me. I know that for a fact.
So the idea of free will that I think is most important is the one that grounds.
Ardenshire says, I took a heroic dose once and became clairvoyant for 12 hours. I tried writing it down, but couldn't write. I wonder if that's some sort of universal defense mechanism. Like, you actually are clairvoyant, but just like in dreams, when you come back, you don't necessarily remember all of it. However, you know you are dreaming. You know you were dreaming. So maybe you weren't just like hallucinating and being weird. Here's the thing with drugs. People will think when you do drugs, you're just like, oh, you're just all kooky up in the brain and nothing that happens is real or anything like that. But if you look into like DMT stories or something like that, where experience after experience are remarkably similar, going to another realm where they speak to like machine elves and stuff like that, it gets difficult, since we're all individuals, to be like, how is this not real if we're all experiencing something that is so similar? You know, maybe you were going in, maybe you were actually clairvoyant and you did see the future, but there's some sort of paradox that keeps you from remembering it as a self-defense mechanism for the universe. That could be.
It's moral responsibility. Some of us have it.
Monkey.
Most of us have it. Some don't. Small children don't have it.
Big B?
Senile, the brain damaged. Other people may lack basic.
Big B says when you smoke meth, there's no enlightenment, which is just great from a trucker. I love hearing that from a trucker.
Moral competence. And that's completely compatible with determinism and with everything we know about the brain.
The compatibilist position is tricky, although it is in fact the most frequently adopted position among modern philosophers. And that's the idea that, yes, we do live in a deterministic universe.
Lost Chaos says, have you ever tried wiping like 80 hits of liquid LSD on a giant chewy sweet tart? Worked for me for a couple of days. Oh my God. How are you with... Maybe you're not with us, dude. Maybe you're just on another planet right now. Are you sure you haven't come down from that? Are you sure you have not come down from that? Maybe you're just still way up there. Maybe you died, right? And you're just imagining this right now. You would have no way of 80 hits of acid. And it goes through your skin, you know. I bet you know that now.
As far as we know, because there's some debate actually about that. But in fact, that doesn't deny the notion that we have free will in the specific sense of non-control causal free will, in the specific sense of volition. We do make decisions. And those decisions are ours in an interesting sense of being our decisions. Just because they're influenced and maybe even determined by causal factors, it doesn't mean that they're not our decisions. If part of those causal factors come from the internal machinery of the human mind, then that's my decision. If I am the one who is making that decision.
One of the interesting things about free will as I define it is that you can lose it and you can have it taken away from you by other agents who manipulate you. And so it's
fairly easily,
that free will
too.
is something you have to protect.
Yeah, fairly easily too. I mean, like you can get drunk and then lose basically you can go retarded. We already touched on this before. Free will, if it exists, is something that is sensitive, that we can lose, that not all of us necessarily have.
And you should want to.
So here you have determinism on one side, and here you have libertarian free will on the other. And most philosophers, by many studies that have been done, fall in the middle. They would be called compatibilists. They think, yes, confront...
Dan Snot says, by the way, if you haven't seen SLC Punk 2, watch it. It's decent. I saw the first one. I saw the second one. I thought it sucked. SLC Punk 2? I remember the first SLC Punk with like the guy from Without a Paddle. You know that guy. I saw the second one. And I thought it sucked. Maybe that was the third one. Was it super low budget? They were in the car.
With the reality that we live in a completely deterministic universe.
Yeah, the first one was
everything is
watchable.
Basically preordained, and we can't violate free will. And yet we tend to live our lives as if we do have free will, and we base our social expectations, we base our laws, we base many policies, we base moral judgments on the assumption that we have free will. So most of the people who do that, who juggle both sides at once, would be called compatibilists.
Compatibilist. Well, I mean, yeah, it's okay. So you might have free will, and then you might not have free will, but like some of us have free will, but a lot of your free will comes from like a determinist point of view. It's kind of like being on the fence. Okay, you're on the fence and you don't know. Just say that. Just say that, you pseudo-intellectual asshole. Just say that. Just say that you don't know. That's fine.
The essence of compatibilism is some kind of causal structure to the universe in general, of course, and in particular to the human organism, right? So how that particular structure, causal structure, is cashed out.
Oh, here we go. Let's go ahead and just ring that old bell for you. Oh, yeah. Come on, give me a little bit more than that. There we go. Beautiful. Tweetologic for 5 says, full lunar eclipse tonight. Yes, there's a blood moon. Apparently it's not going on right now, but I think it's supposed to happen early in the morning tomorrow, or like late tonight. So I'll go out after this and I'll see. And if it's not blood red, I'm gonna scream at it.
It's not really particularly relevant. It could be in a variety of ways. That's why I talk about determinism versus random events is actually a red herring. You have compatibilism anytime you assume that there is a causal structure, a causal web to how the world works. And in particular,
David says, Knob, take my advice. You made the right decision. Never do mood-altering substances. So like alcohol, you can't do alcohol? I can understand not doing SSRIs and stuff, but I can also understand where your point is on alcohol. Even marijuana is mood-altering. So, but then what, caffeine? I mean, that's a broad category. But I get where you're coming from.
To how human beings work. And to do without that...
Anyways. Yo, check out my shirts. Hold on. Let's turn this up a little bit. Check out my shirts at the Incredible Sulk store at bonfire.com/theincrediblesulk-store.com. The link I'll put it in the chat right now. We have many fine accoutrements for your everyday wearing. We have the Yeti abduction, which is despite what you've heard. We also have a very recent one, which is the new one, the Thoughtful Ape, which I think is quite cool. And it's got the Incredible Sulk, and it's 100% cotton, and it comes in a hoodie for all those stoners out there, and also many, many more. So go ahead and over to the Incredible Sulk store at Bonfire and get yourself a shirt. Hit the like button on your way out, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope you enjoyed this mind-bending episode of the Sulk Stream. There's a lot to get into, and we could really talk about this forever, right? Because it's like a indeterminate point. But here's the thing. Does that matter? Is that going to change your life? Not really. It doesn't matter if you have free will or not. You, in this reality, make your decisions. All right? You think you make your decisions. It does not matter. Thinking about this, it's kind of a waste of time. But that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to make you waste your time. And think about wasting your time. Maybe it'll make you better. I don't know. Anyways, guys, I'll be right back here at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. So I hope you guys show up. And I hope you guys are bright and happy and just feeling awesome tomorrow. There's no day wave. But Sulkstream will always be here for you. The Sulkstream will always be here for you. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great night. Stay strong, stay valiant, stay beautiful. Get a nice glass of water, get a good night's sleep, and take care of yourselves because I care about you too. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you. Good night. Ah, wrong button again.
I'm an incredible soul, unhinged and enraged like a bulldog's fist growl. I'm spitting fire, burning through these trees, questioning